It was a chilly morning when Karoline Leavitt stepped into the courtroom. The air was thick with the tension of legal professionals preparing for the cases of the day. The judge was already seated, flipping through papers, seemingly uninterested in anything that wasn't a direct part of his courtroom duties. Caroline adjusted the simple gold crucifix necklace hanging around her neck as she took her seat. It was a piece of jewelry that had been passed down to her by her grandmother, a symbol of her faith and her heritage. A small piece of her identity, but one that she held dear, especially in a place where beliefs and personal symbols could be easily overlooked in the pursuit of the law. But on this day, that very necklace would become a point of contention. As Caroline prepared for her case, the judge, an older man with a stern demeanor, looked up. His gaze fell on her necklace, and an uncomfortable silence hung in the air. "You," he began, his voice sharp and commanding, "take off that necklace. This is a courtroom, not a place for displays of personal religion." The words cut through the air like a blade. Caroline's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't expecting this. Her first instinct was to respond with a strong defense of her rights, but she knew she had to remain composed. The judge's eyes burned with a sense of authority, as though his decision was final, unquestionable. "I'm sorry, Your Honor, but this necklace is important to me," Caroline replied. Her voice was steady, but inside her thoughts were racing. "It's part of who I am, and I respectfully ask that you reconsider." The judge's lips twisted into a cold smile. "You've been warned. Remove it now, or I'll be forced to fine you for disrupting the decorum of this court." The words were sharp, but there was a hidden challenge in them. It wasn't just about the necklace anymore. It was about power, his power. He was trying to assert his dominance over her. Caroline didn't waver. She glanced briefly at the jury, then back to the judge. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I'm here to argue a case, not to be judged for my personal choices. If you want to fine me, I will accept the consequences, but I will not remove this necklace." The tension in the room escalated. The judge, irritated by her defiance, handed down the fine, glaring at her. "Then you will be fined. We will proceed with the case, but be warned, your behavior will be noted." Despite the sting of the fine, Caroline stood tall, her resolve hardening. She wasn't just fighting for her right to wear a necklace. She was fighting for something bigger, the right to be herself, no matter who was watching. The case unfolded, and Caroline's focus shifted to the matter at hand. The fine had already been issued, but now she had to do what she came to do: win the case. Caroline was representing a group of wronged employees who had been subjected to unfair treatment by their employer. She had researched every inch of the case, preparing arguments that were sharp, logical, and rooted in solid legal precedent. Despite the judge's earlier hostility, Caroline didn't allow it to derail her strategy. She stood in front of the court with the kind of confidence that only comes from being absolutely prepared. As she presented her arguments, it became clear to everyone present that she wasn't just some young, naive lawyer. She was a force to be reckoned with. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of someone who knew the law inside and out. She cited case after case, each one reinforcing her point and demonstrating the injustice that had been done to her clients. Her clarity and precision in the courtroom were undeniable. The judge, who had started off with disdain, now found himself listening closely, taken aback by her knowledge and ability to navigate complex legal arguments. He had underestimated her at first based on a necklace. Now he was realizing that he had been wrong. At one point, he tried to interrupt her with a pointed remark, but Caroline didn't flinch. Instead, she used his interruption as an opportunity to make her point even clearer. "Your Honor," she said with a respectful tone, "the case at hand isn't about the trivialities you may be focused on. It's about the lives of the employees who have suffered. It's about justice." Her words hit like a sledgehammer. She wasn't just defending her clients. She was defending the very idea of justice itself. As the hours passed, the judge seemed less certain of himself. His stern expression softened, and his attempts to challenge Caroline's points grew weaker. The courtroom, once tense with the weight of the judge's authority, now felt like a place of balanced tension, the tension of a battle of intellects. Finally, after a long, heated exchange, the judge paused. He looked at Caroline, his eyes no longer filled with disdain but with a new understanding. "Ms. Leavitt," he said slowly, "I must admit, you've made an argument that I wasn't prepared for. There was a moment of silence, and then Caroline allowed herself a small, barely perceptible smile. "Your Honor, this case is about the law," she replied simply, "and the truth. It's not about who's wearing what or how they choose to express their beliefs." The judge, clearly humbled, glanced down at his notes before addressing the court. "I have been too quick to judge. Miss Leavitt, you've made an excellent case. I will reconsider the fine." The room was stunned. The tension had shifted entirely. Caroline hadn't just won the case for her clients. She had earned the respect of the very man who had tried to diminish her. As the trial came to an end, Caroline was victorious, not only in the case, but in something much larger. The judge rescinded the fine, and her clients received the compensation they had long deserved. But the real victory was the lesson everyone in that courtroom learned that day. Don't judge based on appearances, and don't underestimate someone just because they don't fit into your mold. Caroline had proven that strength wasn't just about standing tall physically, it was about standing firm in your beliefs and values, no matter what others tried to impose on you. She had stood her ground for something as small as a necklace, and in doing so, had changed the entire dynamic of the courtroom. Her belief in herself and her clients had proven stronger than the fine, stronger than the judge's authority, and stronger than the biases that had been projected onto her. As Caroline left the courtroom, she glanced at the same judge who had fined her for wearing a necklace just hours before. He met her gaze, a small nod of respect acknowledging her brilliance and resilience. But for Caroline, the moment was far from over. She knew that the real work wasn't just in winning cases. It was in ensuring that no one ever had to face the kind of unfair judgment she had experienced that morning. The system was flawed, but that didn't mean it couldn't be improved, and Caroline was the kind of lawyer who was willing to do that work. The necklace, a symbol of faith and identity, was more than just an accessory. It had become the embodiment of her fight for justice. And in that courtroom, it was the catalyst for a moment of self-discovery for the judge and for everyone who had witnessed the trial. In the end, it wasn't about the necklace at all. It was about who Caroline Leavitt was as a person, someone who didn't let anyone define her, not even the system she was working within. So, what can we take away from this story? The lesson is clear. Never judge a person by their appearance or assumptions. Caroline's fight wasn't about a necklace. It was about being unapologetically herself in a world that often asks people to conform. And in a world where we're constantly faced with challenges and adversities, whether it's in the courtroom, at work, or in our personal lives, it's essential to stand firm in our values and beliefs. We all face moments where the world asks us to shrink, to hide, to be quiet. But Caroline showed us that when we stand tall, when we stand up for what we believe in, the world has no choice but to notice. So I ask you, what do you believe in? What's your necklace? Will you let the world tell you to take it off? Or will you stand firm and say, "This is who I am, and I will not be moved"? Remember, the real strength lies not in bowing down to authority, but in knowing when to defy it and when to use your voice to demand justice, just like Caroline did. Let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts below. Your perspective is valuable and might inspire others.